In this module, we're going to expand the theoretical and conceptual toolkits that we've been developing over the past couple of weeks for analysing media texts and begin looking at the concepts of framing, genre, and intertextuality. Now, you've already begun the process of talking about these concepts in previous weeks, particularly when we were looking at paradigm and syntagm, denotation and connotation, and binary opposition. When you are applying these concepts in class, analysing the various texts for their connotative meaning and exploring binary oppositions, you almost couldn't help yourselves from drawing on a broader social, cultural, and textual framework for interpreting the texts. So the idea of reading texts by drawing on pre-existing knowledge or comparing them to other texts once again demonstrates your ability as natural semioticians by engaging in extra-textual framing and exploring intertextuality. Intertextuality is the notion of interpreting media texts in relation to other texts which they might refer to, might draw on for imagery, or be connected to in some way. In this module, we're going to explore the concepts that allow us to expand not only our understanding of what a text is, but expand our understanding of how a text operates by exploring the idea of context. For example, the social and cultural context that media texts circulate in and how the text is framed in relation to other texts is vital to gaining a full understanding of how that text works. For example, when we talk about Game of Thrones, are we talking about the book, the TV series, merchandise associated with the show, what is said about the show on social media, or all of this? How do these different elements interact with each other to produce meaning? These ideas are central to the success of films from the Marvel universe, which are incredibly complex. Each film has to work individually as a standalone text, but also must be consistent with all the films that have come before it and all the films which will come after it. Genre plays an important role here in framing how we approach a particular media text and how we might think about the media texts that we encounter. We know that for any text to make sense, it has to draw on an established set of shared meanings. This relates back to that idea, which hopefully is really familiar to you now, of how we interpret media being shaped by codes and conventions, which are established through shared meanings. Media texts never function independently of each other, so there is always some sort of relationship between the media texts we're interpreting in any particular moment. In this way, any context which we're investigating simply becomes another text which requires interpretation. Taken to its logical extreme, this means that we can only ever know the world or understand reality through texts. Again, this is one of those tricky ideas that takes a bit of time to get your head around. But for a semiotician, the world exists only as a series of texts, and we make sense of the world only because we have the ability to read and interpret those texts and relate any individual text that we're exposed to at a particular moment to other texts. Of course, the context in which we read or interpret any media text is going to be influenced by a whole range of factors, ranging from physical setting to our social class, our gender, our race or cultural background. These are going to play a very important role in establishing the meanings that we bring to any media text. For example, how we behave when we go to an art gallery would be very different from how we might behave if we were at a gig. At an art gallery, we would be quite restrained and polite. We would try to avoid making noise, or if we were going to talk to our friends, we'd probably whisper. We certainly wouldn't be loud or draw attention to ourselves, and we certainly wouldn't crowd surf. Depending on the context in which we're reading any particular text at any particular time, our behaviours change. Understanding context is actually quite a sophisticated process. The context in which we understand any media text is always being modified by our ongoing relationship with other texts. For example, we know that Netflix and chill doesn't really mean Netflix and chill. Similarly, when we watch an Avengers film or a film featuring any one of the individual characters from the Marvel Universe, whether it be Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, or Captain America, we're always, as audiences, making connections between the film we're watching at that moment and other films in the franchise that we might have seen. We're always relating our interpretations of media texts to other media texts that we've been exposed to. That means any individual media text or media product doesn't have a unified meaning, which is determined by a single context. Our interpretations of media always take place within multiple and varied contexts, and that produces multiple and varied meanings.